Hello once again. The draft withdrawal agreement still has a long way to go before ratification by the EU and the UK. Furthermore, there are differences between this draft and the joint report, which was issued last December. Aoife O'Donoghue is Professor of International Law and Governance at the University of Durham. Put simply, what are the differences between the draft agreement and what was issued last year?
Well, the biggest difference is the creation of the UK-wide customs territory. So that is the most significant difference. That if, and I really want to emphasise the if, we have to go to the backstop, that all of the UK will be in a customs territory with the European Union, not just Northern Ireland. And that is a real big significant gain that the UK got since the publication of the report last December.
What difference would it make to us in Northern Ireland then?
Well, I think on a day-to-day basis for business, it'll make a very big difference, because it means that everyone in Northern Ireland will be able to access the EU market very easily with no barriers, no customs, no difference in regulation between Northern Ireland and the European Union. And then for trade going to the rest of Britain, it should equally be very straightforward. There may be some regulatory differences between Britain and Northern Ireland that might develop over time, but that really is up to London as to how different it wants to be. So it initially should, live business particularly, should continue as normal, with particularly with regard to the European Union and indeed with the rest of Britain. Michel Barnier emphasised when he launched the new draft, but also in the document itself, that any checks between goods coming from or going into Britain from Northern Ireland would be minimal. There would be very few new checks beyond what's already there at the moment.
What would be the difference when it comes to people who live on one side of the border and work on the other?
Well, in both, actually, this hasn't changed all that significantly. So if you are what's called technically a frontier worker, so somebody that goes from one country in the European Union into another part of the European Union to work every day, you will keep that status if you are that when the end of the transition occurs. However, if you are not a frontier worker, so perhaps maybe a year after the end of the transition, if you get a job, for instance, in Dublin and you're commuting there from Belfast every day, or indeed vice versa, you won't have that frontier work status. So that will mean that things like double taxation could occur, difficulties with social security. The common travel area means that you won't have to get a visa or anything like that. But those difficulties still need to be worked out, and hopefully will be worked out in the next set of negotiations, which will do the long-term relationship between the UK and the European Union.
What do you make of the deal as it stands?
As it stands, I think it is a very good compromise. I mean, it is very much based on the idea that the transition will either be extended, so the backstop won't have to occur, or if the backstop does occur, that this is a short-term plan. That the ideal is that a proper trade deal will be done between the EU and the UK in the longer term. And really, this is quite a unique deal. The withdrawal agreement, there is nothing like it globally. So really, for Northern Ireland, I think it is probably the best outcome that could have been envisaged. For, as I say, the backstop. As I said, in the long term, in 20 years, hopefully that will be done in a full deal. It certainly is far superior to no deal.
Can you say that life will continue pretty much as normal? You were talking there about a possible introduction of services from some companies. Are you saying that actually it will be all right in the end?
Well, services is probably the area where access will become the most difficult. So for goods, products, and people, it probably will remain fairly straightforward because of the common travel area. But actually, Northern Ireland, with the provision of services across the border, will become that bit more difficult. Originally, actually, in the draft withdrawal agreement, as first published in March and in the joint report, it looked like people in Northern Ireland would be able to exercise their EU services right while still resident in Northern Ireland, but that has disappeared. So the provision of services for financial services companies will be more difficult, but goods will remain very straightforward.
A final question for you, and briefly if you would. Nobody wants a backstop, but should it kick in, what effect would it have here?
Well, I think if it kicks in, and it is very much an if, I think what people will see is that labelling, for instance, will change. Companies will have to start labelling their goods UKNI. For instance, so that will be a change. Certification processes will change for companies, but on a day-to-day basis, life shouldn't change a huge amount. Though at the end of the transition period, the cap payments do end. So the Common Agricultural Policy will stop applying in Northern Ireland. So for farmers, that will make a huge difference.
Aoife O'Donoghue, thank you very much indeed.
You're very welcome.